Thank you for listening to the Unscripted Dreams Podcast with Joe and Marcus. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to email us at unscripteddreams@gmail.com. If you're interested in listening to exclusive content that includes bonus episodes and our hindsight video series, please join us on Patreon at the Unscripted Dreams Podcast. If you're listening to our podcast on YouTube, you can find us on iTunes, Spotify, or iHeartRadio. Thank you, Roland.
As we know, life is full of surprises, both good and bad. The day-to-day journey is full of unforeseen obstacles, and sometimes it's hard to see our way through. Beyond the norm and mundane are where unscripted dreams live. Join us for thought-provoking discussions and interviews to help us navigate through the fog and create our own path. We are the Unscripted Dream Podcast, operating outside the margins to motivate and inspire our audience. So today's episode is geared around elevation. That's what it is. Let me give you a quick definition of elevation. It's the vertical distance between a standard reference point. That's not what we mean by elevation at all. So don't listen to me. I made it funny.
But Joe, no, I think what elevation is, I think it kind of speaks for itself, but as far as in your life, if you're trying to elevate yourself, you're trying to pull yourself somewhere that you've never been before, or maybe you're trying to pull yourself back to a place you were. And, you're trying to figure out how do I get back, or how do I get there for the first time? That's what we're going to talk about.
You said it.
So first thing I'd like to acknowledge is that, my brother, James, actually requested that we do this episode. And what was funny is that it reminded me of the Survivor's Remorse episode, like when you pitched it, Joe, and I was acting how I was acting and about it, but we did it, we did it. And, I think what it made me kind of, by the show getting for us for that, getting that request, what it made me do, because this was a topic that for me, I wanted to talk about, but I wanted to wait until I hit a certain point before I even approached it. So I think what was unique about doing this episode is that it allowed me to get into a space where I was able to kind of look at some things and understand progress in a different light. And maybe I'll be able, or maybe we'll both be able to explain it in a light that people might not quite see or understand the progress that they're actually making.
Okay, well, let's start off first and foremost, man. What does elevation mean to you based on you pivoting out to something desirable? Say you're in a bad situation and you're trying to get out. What are some of the core things that you would process or do to help yourself navigate out of a situation that is causing you more or less grief?
Well, I think it's important to, you have to acknowledge and process what's going on. You can't sugarcoat it for yourself. It's important that you don't lie to yourself. If you're lying to folks, please don't lie to yourself. And I think that's important because you have to take ownership of your situation, of your, whatever predicament that you're in. And I think that's the first step to really starting to like pivot yourself, is because now you get a hold on what's going on. You have to, once you own it, you can start making moves to, work against it or work yourself out of that situation. What would you say?
I would agree. As far as the first step in that process is realization, realizing what you're up against, like Marcus mentioned. And then, of course, you already know what's coming next, right? How are you going to go about it? So once you realize the situation you're in, I think it's very important that immediately you start putting in work as far as how to set yourself up to being in a better situation. I can give you many examples. I'll give you an example where I felt like I hit a glass ceiling in my professional career at one point. And I really felt trapped. I felt like I couldn't go anywhere. And ideally, that's really what happened. I was trapped, but I wasn't necessarily backed into a corner. So what did I do? I started to venture out. I ventured out by being a little bit more friendlier to people, hanging around and being around areas on the job where I normally didn't hang around purposely. I thought completely outside of the box. Whatever you're doing right now is not working. So let's shake up the environment by, hey, instead of you doing this or being somewhere on your break, be amongst these people on your break. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Be proactive. Email people. You never know. You might catch them on a good day. Those small things can lead into very big things. So you have to always constantly be moving if you're in a place you're not desired, or wherever you want to be, so to speak. So if you're in a bad situation like I was, I would definitely encourage you to not be content with that. Don't let it beat you down. If anything, let it motivate you to bring out that fire from within and show people that you're really serious about it.
Yeah. And Joe, I think you made a good point. And I think that brings me to one of the key points I wanted to speak on, is that it's important to make moves mentally that will manifest themselves physically.
Yes.
So every day, I mean, Joe, you're well aware of this. I mean, anybody who's listening is well aware of this, that I do not enjoy working for other people. I don't enjoy it, but I do it. And with the work I'm doing now, if you're familiar with, if your phone has, Joe, does your phone have power save mode?
Most certainly.
Yeah. So if you've ever used your power saver mode on your phone, as soon as you turn it on, it starts to shut down functions in your phone. So every day I go to work, I put myself in a power saver mode. So not to do a disservice to the people that I work for, just that the work that they're doing, the work that I'm doing at this time doesn't require me to use like any like higher brain function or anything like that. Like I don't have to tap into certain things. So I kind of use that time to, the time that I'm at this job to kind of just, focus on, maybe I'm focused on what we're doing for the podcast. Maybe I'm able to focus on what other things I want to do in my business, or, think about other things like that, because it doesn't require me to expel all that, just the mental energy. So, now that does create a problem for me sometimes, because sometimes I kind of zone out. Like I'll be working for hours, and then they'll call me or somebody will message me on the radio, and then I have to like focus back in. But I've probably spent an hour and a half of those couple hours, like really just thinking about what moves am I going to make when I get off of work to move myself forward. So this will be, a job that I don't have to continue to go to, so, but like I said, it's about, like really picking and choosing, where you're giving, like take inventory of who you're giving all your time and your energy to, and, ask yourself, is it really necessary? And, ask yourself, is it worth it? Because sometimes that deal that you have with an employer, it's a good deal for them, but it's a bad deal for you.
In most cases, it's not a favorable deal for you. It just so happened that the situation might have been offered to you and put you in a better predicament than you were previously, but it's still not where you want to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing that I think is important is, I think I don't know how many times we're going to talk about EQ. Like I feel like it should just be a prerequisite before you even start to listen to these episodes, just because of how much we talk about it. But that just lends to just to let you know how how important it is. But it's important to really, like, you have to be able to beat your worst self. And that means that you have to know, you really have to know who you are, and you have to know your tendency to engage in certain actions or procrastinate and things like that. Like this, for example, Joe and I, we did 2 videos this past week. We did a hindsight, and then we did like over an hour long little special on the student debt crisis. And I was sitting there editing these videos. And if you edit videos, you know that it's not like, it's time consuming. I was working on the financial aid student debt video, and I was working on it for I was probably almost halfway through the video. I remember I was at the 37-minute mark because I was trying to put something in there. I was trying to put a slide or something in there. Mm-hmm. And then I was doing that work, and then the whole program just shut down.
Oh,
after I was working on it for maybe an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. And that's not counting the time that I spent researching the new pieces I was trying to put into the videos to add to the quality of the content. So when that happened, I had a thought that said, I'm going to open this thing back up, paste this video clip, put the little intro in there, put the intro slide, edit the music, and just let it run. Do those pieces. And I actually thought about that. And then I thought to myself, like, you need to do what's right. And you need to go ahead, take that L and go ahead and do it right. So I spent what I thought was going to take me 3.5, 4 hours, took me around 6 hours to do, because I went back and I fixed it. I fixed whatever I was working on and I made it right. But just imagine what happens, if I would have just decided to just throw that video together. It wouldn't be I think it's a better service, me putting some of the edits that I put in there, as simple as they may seem. It's about, knowing that. Now, nobody would have known that except for me. Joe didn't know I was going to try to do a lot of the stuff I put in there, but, it's important to improve the quality of the work that you're doing over time. And that's part of, elevating yourself as well, is, you have to push yourself to do better. And that was an opportunity for me to be lazy and give up, but I was like, I'm just going to push through it, suck it up, and watch this video again. I was mad while I was doing it too. Like, I wasn't happy about doing it, but the video's done and it has almost everything that was lost in there. So, it's just important. I think it's really important to know your tendency to do things that aren't going to be in your, aren't going to work in your favor, and be ready to combat those when those things arrive, because you will be faced with those circumstances. It'll feel like it's ideal to take the easy way out or to quit instead of pushing through whatever obstacle has presented itself.
That's a nice piece there. Giving them some good words there, word of advice. Let's focus on as far as mastering your craft. When you think of the term master your craft, Marcus, what comes to mind?
Work, a lot of work, a lot of time and effort, because, I'm not oblivious to the fact that I think neither of us are, is that there's somebody else who's doing something in the same lane that you're doing it. It might not be exactly the same, but there's someone else, or maybe there's multiple people that are doing what you're doing, and they're trying to create a name for themselves, or they're trying to build their brand, their business. And every day, every moment that you spend doing something else that's not related to whatever goal you have, those people are gaining an edge, or they're moving further in front of you than maybe they already were.
They're hungrier. So, that's a lot of things you got to keep in mind. The level of competition doesn't stop. That's why you always have to master your craft with whatever you do. You got to put your best foot forward, 100% effort, every man, every play. It's a football quote there. But you got to put your best foot forward, man, because like I said before, many a times on this platform, you never know who's watching and you never know who's in the rafters willing to take your spot. So you always have to keep in mind that, did I give it my all today? Did I give it my best? So if a situation does occur where you're outed or someone's better than you, hopefully, I would hope that you gave it your all to the point where you can just kind of let that one go and move on to the next thing. Because the worst thing that can happen is you're mastering your craft, or you might semi be mastering you might not even be focused on that. So let's say worst case scenario, you think you got your job in the bag, and worst comes to worst, you lose it over your performance, which unfortunately does happen. Sometimes it's not even on you. Sometimes it's the other factors that are in play. A lot of times that's what happens, is there's other factors in play and it's out of your hands. So with the timing being off with that, for whatever reasons, you lose your job and someone comes in. At the end of the day, when they give you that pink slip or whatever document to let you go, that you sign on, if you choose to, can you wholeheartedly say, or would you be wholeheartedly willing to say, I gave it my all, I gave it my best? Now, that's never a good situation to be in. But the reason why I ask that question is because that's going to be the deciding factor on how fast you move forward. So it's not always about being, it's all about how you're going to come back from that setback. Because something like that could be detrimental to your health for the rest of your career if you weren't giving it the best that you could. And early on in my situation, I've dealt with those type of situations, and it was out of my control and out of my hands. And they gave me 1,000,001 reasons before they let me go with my contract. And I just instantly thought to myself, did I do everything I could have done given the situation? So what played around in my head instantly after that, and for a few more years after that, I always thought, did I give it my best? Given the situations and what I went through with 8 different supervisors in 1 year, that's unheard of, but that happened to me.
It's crazy.
You got to really think about those type of things, even though they're out of your control. So what I'm trying to say is, how quickly are you able to move on from disappointment is a key part of elevating to where you want to be. So are you quick to move on, or are you quick to dwell on things in the past?
Yeah. And Joe, I think you make a really good point, because when you're trying to, get out of your situation, and, like things, like you're going to have setbacks, like things are, like I just remember walking into my job. I'll talk about this another time, like walking into my job, and then the people who own the company walk in and they put in a move to buy it, which displaces me. That morning when I got up, I wasn't planning on any of that happening. And that changed the whole trajectory of everything I was doing.
Probably jacked your whole mood up and everything.
Yeah. As many people tried to reassure me what was happening, but I mean, that's the kind of stuff that happens. I think that I'm 100% sure that happens to somebody every day. Will happen to me. And it's not like, that's just part of, it's just business. That's just part of working in that world. And that's what happens when you're not in control. But, I just think about, when those kind of things happen, you get fired, or, there's downsizing or something like that. I mean, it's usually going to have a negative impact on you. And it's about, like, how long are you going to allow yourself to soak in that before you move on? Because what's important is that you want to think that it's important to move past that. The sooner you move past it, the sooner you can, bring yourself to a better place, hopefully. And, you kind of have to understand that. And know that it's okay to be upset about it. Like, it's okay. Like, you might be sad or distressed for some people, it might be a day or two. For some, it might be a week, a month, a few months, maybe a year. Sometimes it might take people a year to recover.
Dude, it took me a couple years to recover. So just think about that, man. He's speaking real stuff. And that's a really key thing to elevating is recovery.
Yeah. Recovery is key. And I think some people are, they're ashamed of it when things happen, but those things affect us all differently. And, we have to understand that for everybody we come across, that stuff's going to impact us differently. Like if somebody has a family, that's going to affect them differently than somebody that's, single, if they lose their job, or, somebody who doesn't really have to work, or they're just, some people, everybody doesn't have to work, so it's different for everybody, but it's important to understand that as soon as you can move past it, and even sometimes maybe you might move halfway past it, and maybe you get halfway past it, allows you to take that other half of your energy, that other half of your focus, and start putting that into something else. And as you move past that, that poor circumstance, you're making strides in a different area. Like maybe you've been depressed for like 6 months, a year, you've been depressed, and then you find for maybe 20, 30 minutes a day, you feel okay. And you make a decision, for those 30 minutes, I'm going to do something positive. I might go back to being sad for, 23 hours, but for 30 minutes, I'll do something. And maybe that 30 minutes grows into an hour, that grows into 2, and so on. But, even if it's 10 minutes, you got to use that 10 and do something good with it. Do something. If you get a pit, like it's almost like, if you're in a dark place and you just get like the sun comes out just a little bit, just a little bit, just take it and run with it before it gets dark again, and do something. And, you want that, hopefully that light will, eventually shine brighter than the darkness. But, you just have to take ownership of it.
Okay, and let's double back to what you said earlier, Marcus, about focus. This is something that a lot of people overlook. And the reason why I want to say focus is another huge point in elevating yourself is because it's one of the key components that you could ever have in this world. How often or how many distractions do you have readily in front of your face? Is it the TV? Is it your spouse or the people you're chasing in the streets? Is it is it the rent you pay? Is it that annoying ass neighbor, that creep across the street with hiding in the bushes? You know what I'm saying? There's all kind of distractions in this world that come into play with your life situation or your livelihood. And the key thing is how often or how much time do you spend on yourself as far as be able to process all of this so you can really realize where you need to focus. Are you actually getting enough sleep at night? That's important. I can say I don't for various reasons, but that's not an excuse. You need to sleep. You need rest. You need time to reboot all systems online so you can make great decisions the next day at work. I know work is a routinely thing, okay? Very routine, very boring at times. At the same time, that's your livelihood. So whatever you do on the job routinely, that's going to outpour in your work and how effective you are and how the people around you look at you and value you as an effective employee or coworker. Think about that. Also with focus, you got to think about the measurement of flow. Are you able to flow through the day? How is your flow? You got to get a flow going. I like to call it momentum, but let's refer to it as flow. You got to have some type of flow, man. If you don't have any flow, you're not flowing. You ain't going. you're stagnant. So the flow is the fuel to your tank. If you ain't got none of that going on, you're probably going to stay stagnant for a very long time. So you got to figure out what keeps you going. Is it because you wake up in the morning and you work out and then you go to work and then, your juices are flowing? Hey, is it that cup of coffee that gets you fired up? Hopefully it doesn't make you run to the bathroom by 9:00 and you just got there at 8:00. It's just like simple things like that. What fires you up? Is it the Mountain Dew? Are you jacked up on that? You got to figure out what things can really incite you. It could even be this podcast or multiple other platform podcasts or videos that you watch that gets you into that mindset or that flow to keep you moving forward. That's what you need.
Yeah, I think you made a lot of good points there, Joe. A couple things I like to add to what you're doing. I mean, it's real important to, have momentum. And this actually, that ties into what I was just going to talk about. I remember last week I was working on those videos, something that I thought was going to take 3-4 hours turned into 6 hours or something ridiculous like that. And, it turned into, it's important. I think the one thing that people, they kind of attribute to, or they think is a big thing is that, well, if I put the hours in, if I put the time in, things will, start to turn around for me or for you, things like that. And it wasn't, I think that day I was working on those videos, I worked from 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. And the only reason I know that is because I was preparing for this episode, but it wasn't about me counting how many hours I worked that day. It was about me counting the actions. I was like, this is what's on the agenda today. I need to get these things done before I'm finished. It wasn't about, like, the time didn't really even matter. It was just about completing what I set out to do that day, regardless of how much time it took. So I think, somebody could say, oh, I spent 8 hours working on something, but how many of those 8 hours were you like focused? Like, were you locked in doing work? Or are you just sitting there saying you worked 8 hours to make yourself feel better? Like, what did you actually get done in that time? Like, what actions did you take? And that's, I think,
right now, working from home is a proof in the pudding of that right there. How are people more productive at home? That's one thing that you got to think about. You're not sitting there lounging. You don't take multiple breaks because you're sitting at home, right? Or more or less, you can be at home and you get all your work out of the way and then you're doing all your chores. There's, however, which way you're looking at it. What I'm saying is there's a lot of wasted time that you're not even accounting for.
Mm-hmm. And, time is the one thing you can't get back. You can't buy it. You cannot buy time. But the last thing I'll say, and I'll close with this, Joe, is that, sometimes you're looking for someone else to see the path that you should take. And, you look at how someone else made it and you're basing your movements on what this other person has done. But, when you find you're not finding traction with that, it's because for some people, for some situations that you're going through, like, you're writing the blueprint to your situation. So,
Amen.
So some things that you do are just going to be specific to you because there's variables with everyone. There's this different variables that might be, family. You might have kids. You might have like health issues or something. You have something that's going on that's specific to your situation, and you have to find out. And you really have to, you have to discover what's the best way for me to get out of my situation using the resources that I have, the support system that you have. Like, what are you able to do? And you have to figure that out. And, and I think that's what can be tricky for people sometimes is that, you have to figure out and come to terms with, hey, like, this is the path I'm going to take. And the sooner, the thing is that you're going to spend time trying to figure things out. But the sooner you figure it out, the sooner you can move on. But take that time to think and really figure things out. And sometimes you just need to do something just so you can get it done with and know that that doesn't work so you can move on. So like I said, the sooner you make, learn to make the most out of your time and learn to, acknowledge your situation. And, sometimes that thing that pushes you forward, it's going to have to come from inside of you. And, you're writing that story for yourself. And maybe that story will help somebody else out. But right now you have to focus on, figuring out what's going to work for you. Because there might not be a solution out there to your problem yet.
I find me going through that a lot. So I can definitely relate to that. So I'm learning while I'm on airing a podcast. That's crazy. So I'm going to end with this statement. I can't outdo what he said, but I will speak on as far as rest, as I said before. If you've been at this grind for X amount of time, it's very important that you do spend some time away from it so you can come back refreshed, clear, and more or less get yourself out of the situation you're in. If you're spending too much time grinding, you're not giving yourself enough time to create ideation, come up with new ideas, think of some things. Have a change of heart. Maybe you need to change your heart, change your pace. So with this statement, missing a single day has no measurable impact on whether or not you maintain a habit long term. So what that means is you can consistently do something forever, and by just missing a day or two will have no impact on what you do whatsoever. So just think about that. Taking breaks is more necessary than staying on the job all day, every day, with mastering your craft and elevating to being the best you can be in and out of situations.
Mm-hmm. Well said, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah, man. But if you're done, we'll wrap. I got some stuff for hindsight. I'm gonna hold on to that so I can present it the best way possible, so it can have that maximum impact. But thank you all for listening, and as always, take care, be safe.
Appreciate y'all. Keep listening.